Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you guys are new here, welcome. My name is Braden Timmons, and today we are talking about Halloween 2, 1981, as we continue our journey to Halloween Ends. So if you guys are brand new here, consider clicking that subscribe button. I've had a great time talking with you guys about Halloween as we lead up to the end. Last week, I had a great time talking about Halloween 1978, and this week we're continuing with Halloween 2. And same thing as last week, the kill ranking will be out this upcoming Wednesday. So Halloween 2 is directed by Rick Rosenthal, and the story literally picks up right where Halloween 1978 left off. I do feel like that this is a very logical choice as to where to pick up this story, because it just feels like one nice continuation, as if like you're almost watching a TV series. Rick Rosenthal actually does a really good job at emulating what made Halloween so special, and while the direction of that movie will always be special to John Carpenter in the way that he put it together, I do think that Rick Rosenthal actually stepped in and did a really good job at trying to emulate what made that movie that movie. And because the budget was a little bit bigger this time around, we can actually do more things with Michael Myers. Michael Myers is actually out in the streets a little bit more. He's walking around with a Halloween mask through a group of trick-or-treaters through town. There's a lot more that we actually get to see. And the movie is actually also a little bit more gory than Halloween 1978, and we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. But right now, let's talk about why does this movie exist? Was there a purpose for a sequel to Halloween, because it's already such a great movie? And the answer is no, there wasn't a purpose for Halloween 2. When it comes down to it, John Carpenter actually did not want a sequel to Halloween. He had already been done with it. He was like, it was supposed to be a one and done type of thing. He didn't want to do another one. It was Irwin Yablans that really pushed him. Irwin Yablans is one of the executive producers, really pushed him to do a sequel to Halloween. And Carpenter said that he would be involved, but he did not want to direct. So him and Deborah Hill decided to go ahead and be aboard for the screenplay, and Carpenter also composed the score for this movie, this time along with Alan Howarth, and I feel like he didn't remix things too much. I thought that it was actually a pretty good update for what they were going with. I remember that when I watched this movie for the first time, because I was so used to hearing the original Halloween theme, I actually had to take out the disc and like wipe it off because I thought that there was like something wrong with the sound. But that's just me, because it does sound just a tad bit different. Some of the notes in the music seem just a little bit different, but for the most part it's the same thing. And I actually do like Laurie's theme that plays throughout this movie more than I do the original Laurie's theme, but that's just me. So there are some tracks I like a little bit more than the original, but again, that's just a personal opinion. Let's talk about where this movie picks up now. This movie picks up right where Halloween 1978 left off. As I said, it actually literally showcases the ending of it. Michael Myers is now still on the loose hunting a new group of teenagers while he can figure out where Laurie Strode is. Laurie Strode gets picked up by some EMTs and brought to Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, and Dr. Loomis and the police are still out on the street hunting for Michael Myers.
6 times? What? I shot him 6 times. I shot him in the heart.
I shot him 6 times. I shot him in the heart. I will say Halloween 2 does have some of the most iconic lines for Dr. Loomis. Like the opening when he comes down and he finds the blood confirming that he did shoot Michael Myers, I absolutely think is great, because he looks up, he's like, call the police, tell the sheriff I shot him. Who? The "you don't know what death is" line is such a great line to have before the opening music starts. It just gets you into that vibe, like you really don't know what death is. Dr. Loomis feels like he does because he knows what Michael Myers is, and he's trying to hunt down evil. So like last week, I do want to talk about some issues with this movie, because it's not perfect, and if Halloween 1978 is not perfect, while it is my favorite horror movie ever, I only discussed 2 issues last week, and I'm going to do the same thing essentially here. As I said in the very beginning, Dr. Loomis actually comes downstairs instead of looking over the balcony as he did in 1978, and he already saw upstairs that Michael Myers was gone. So he actually, in this movie, comes downstairs and he sees the outline in the grass of the body that he shot, and it's gone, but yet he's still just as surprised here as he was in the original, even though we already knew that he was shocked that Michael Myers was gone. Now, this issue is pretty much undermined by the fact that I really sit down and think about it, it could just be the fact that perhaps he needed to get a closer look. Like, have you guys ever thought about that? Like, have you guys ever examined something and you see it from a distance, but you need to get a little bit closer to it just to make sure you're examining it properly? I feel like that's the case here. So I feel like that issue could be undermined. It's just like a small technical issue that I see. And that's really all this movie is, guys. It's just got some very minute technical issues. There are some cuts that seem a little bit weird throughout the movie. And then there's like the Annie, she blinks. When Sheriff Brackett is going down to close his daughter's eyes, she does actually blink. Her eye is moving. And you can see that she is terrible at playing dead. And then at the end, when Michael is walking out of the fire, you can tell that he has a major jumpsuit on. Like he has like he's blimped up completely, because throughout the movie he's very, you know, small and lean, and when we get to the end of the movie, he is and he's walking out of that fire, you can tell that it's a big bodysuit that they have to have the actor in. Again, very, very small stuff, but let's get back into talking about what makes Halloween 2 so great. So this time around, Michael Myers is played by Dick Warlock, and I actually really do like Warlock's portrayal of Michael Myers. He does seem a little bit more stiff than Nick Castle did. Nick Castle, he just pretty much walked, and in this movie, he actually seems like he is a bit more on the stiff side. But the way that Warlock portrays Michael, the way that he walks and moves and stalks, I think he does a very, very good job. Michael Myers is very creepy in this movie, and I love the utilization of Haddonfield Memorial Hospital. There's just something that I love about a small town abandoned hospital in the middle of the night where you can just have some really, really great sets, and they really do utilize that. That is one thing I absolutely love about this movie, is seeing Michael walking through the hallway, the way that they utilize some of the cameras sometimes, what I mean by cameras is I mean like the security cameras within the hospital. I really like how Rosenthal actually utilizes that, and then will like pan up to showcase people walking through the hallway, showcasing that they might be getting a little bit closer to Michael Myers. The way that this movie is shot, this is a very gorgeous looking movie, and Rosenthal was actually recommended by John Carpenter, and he ended up getting the job. And again, Rosenthal does a really great job at emulating Carpenter's work. He does the classic POV shots, except this time around, we get to see a little bit more of how Halloween is actually celebrated in Haddonfield. I said last week in the 1978 review that movie does such a great job at showcasing what a Halloween night can look like at home, from a babysitting perspective, like to where you carve pumpkins, you watch scary movies, you're sitting on a couch, you're telling ghost stories. Tommy Doyle obviously talked a lot about the boogeyman, and that scared Lindsay. That's what makes the holiday so damn great. This movie, we actually get a chance to see how Halloween is celebrated in Haddonfield. We get to see Michael Myers walking around a little bit more. We get to see the cops out like really searching for Michael Myers, and we get to see people out on the streets and what people are actually doing on Halloween night throughout town. Like we see some nurses walking to the car, they're talking about Stevie Mac's Halloween party that they were just at. And we see, just how the atmosphere of Halloween is really alive in this small town. And in between all of that, Michael Myers is understanding that Laurie Strode has been taken to the hospital, and that's where he heads, and that is where he remains for pretty much the good duration of this movie. Let's talk a little bit about the blood of this movie, because this movie is more violent than Halloween 1978, and actually Rick Rosenthal did direct this movie to make things a little bit more subtle. Carpenter actually decided to go back in and do some reshoots because of the slashers that Halloween actually inspired were now coming out, and those movies were actually a little bit more gory. Carpenter said that if they didn't go back in and reshoot and they didn't make it more violent, that it wouldn't be scary enough. So I think that this was actually a very poor choice by Carpenter at the time. Watching it today, it definitely feels not as gory as we've seen in recent years, that is for sure. But I do think that at the time, that it was one of the biggest criticisms, was that it was not as good because they upped the gore factor. And the thing that makes Halloween is the fact that it's not a violent movie. Everything is very theater of the mind like, and everything happens at such a pace to like where you can understand what's going on, but we don't ever see the full effect of what's going on. In Halloween 2, now we actually start seeing the effect. Like we see women's faces getting burned alive. We see, a lot more blood in the movie. And again, nowadays, I do feel like that works, because I feel like that was ahead of its time. Even though Friday the 13th and everything like that was coming out at the time did utilize the blood, that was also one of the biggest criticisms of those movies. But nowadays, it does feel like that okay, audiences definitely like more blood, so I feel like that was a little bit ahead of its time. So watching it today, again, I very much like it. But one thing that I haven't highlighted yet is the fact that there is actually a backstory here that we get. That is actually something that Carpenter said that he wishes that he would go back now and change if he could. And that is, we get the brother-sister timeline introduced. We find out that Laurie Strode and Michael Myers are related.
That girl, that Strode girl, that's Michael Myers' sister.
There's also more of an attempt of a backstory to figure out why Michael Myers is able to be driven and get shot as many times as he can and not have anything happen to him. Like, there's the whole Sam Hain thing that's introduced, and then, like, there's really a lot of stuff that's going on here that, again, brings more into the story than I feel like it really needed to. Now, I don't mind the brother-sister story. I actually do think that it's good to have, like, a drive as to what's making Michael Myers go after Laurie Strode. Laurie finds out in this movie who Michael Myers is when she's talking to Jimmy. And I also like that the town of Haddonfield is very familiar with its history. It's like she even looks at Jimmy and she's like, the young boy that killed his sister? Like all those years ago? I really like that. I like that it's not new news to the town of Haddonfield, that Michael Myers is iconic and now he is back. And now he is going after a bunch of new teenagers. So, you know, the movie in that aspect does kind of get a little crammed because there's a lot of different elements that are getting introduced that is essentially hit into play more as we progress throughout this franchise. Like, you know, the Sam Hain thing is huge in Halloween 6. The brother-sister story is essential for Halloween H2O. There's a lot of sequels that follow that really utilize elements that are introduced in this movie. But I do feel like for what's going on and, you know, the drive and trying to understand Michael Myers, it just really does take away out of the great elements of Halloween 1978. But I will say, if you need to have a reason for a sequel to exist, you have to add in new things. Because imagine if we didn't find any of that out, it would just feel like that the sequel was just kind of there and they're just doing the same thing. Especially if it's taking place right after Halloween 1978. I mean, it would literally feel like the exact same thing, maybe just in a hospital. So you have to kind of justify its existence, and I do think that this movie does. I really love Halloween 2. I think that it is a gorgeous looking movie. Rick Rosenthal does an absolutely outstanding job behind the camera. All of the technical work is pretty much there. You know, the score and everything. John Carpenter and Alan Howarth's score is great. And the kills in this movie is definitely a step up from Halloween 1978, especially watching it today. I'm glad that Carpenter actually kind of maybe jumped ahead of its time and went back in and reshot some of these deaths to make it a little bit more gory. I do really appreciate that. Now, the best thing about Halloween 2 is the fact that this is a movie that you can honestly watch back to back with the original. This movie does very much rely on the fact that you have seen the original Halloween. If you have not seen the original Halloween, you're not going to understand what's going on. You are going to be very confused because this movie takes very little time to set up what's actually going on. Like, every character is pretty much established. We pretty much get to know all of them an hour before this movie takes place, and actually some of them like 10 minutes before the movie takes place. So, I mean, you really got to watch Halloween and then you have to watch this back to back because it could just make for a very fun Halloween night. I do that every single year. I watch Halloween and Halloween 2 back to back. I make a big bucket of popcorn. I've got a nice jack-o'-lantern that sits right next to me, and I just have such a fun time watching both of these back to back. And just the way that the movie is shot, the gorgeousness of it, the way that they utilize the abandoned hospital, and the way that they utilize the kills and Dick Warlock. And at the end of the day, guys, love Halloween 2. I think that it is an absolutely great sequel. Again, it's great and preferred to watch back to back with Halloween 1978 and then Halloween 2. And very much like last week, man, I gotta say, because I love this movie so much, I gotta say that Halloween 2 is pumpkin smashing. So with all that being said, guys, post comments down below. Let me know, what do you guys think of Halloween 2 1981? Do you guys love it? Do you guys hate it? Where does it rank on your guys' scale? Do you guys prefer this over to some of the sequels that we are getting today? And do you guys actually prefer it over the new sequels that we're currently getting? Because I definitely know that I do. So leave comments down below. Let me know. And as always, if you guys like this, don't forget to join me on my journey to 10,000 subscribers. And I will see you guys this Wednesday in the Halloween 2 kill ranking.